Hi, this is Carson with Troy, and I have with me David Hankins. Now, David is a award winner for Writers of the Future. He's retired from the Army, and he is just starting his writer's journey. He is a published author in some anthologies, and I'm so excited for him to be here with us today because I think he can have uh, add a lot of value to anybody who's trying to begin their journey. David, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I started writing about 5 years ago. I was writing alone and unafraid. I didn't have any writing group I was working with. It all started with stories I was telling my daughter, as I was trying to get her to go to sleep, which always backfired. And then that progressed, and she started catching discrepancies in my stories. And it's like, no, no, that didn't happen. And so I had to start writing things down in order to keep all of my storylines straight. Fast forward a little bit, this all turned into two and a half novels that I started querying out to agents with absolutely zero success. And so I thought, well, clearly it's because I'm a new author. Nobody's heard of me before. I need credits for my name. So I'll go find a writing contest, place in it somehow, and easy peasy, no problem. So went to Google, found Writers of the Future. I'd never heard of it before, and thought, oh yeah, this has good prize money. Yeah, I'll go for this. Submitted, and that first one got an honorable mention. And I've just been doing short stories ever since. That was about um, 2 years ago now that I submitted my first one.
That's pretty amazing that your first one got honorable mention. What were I have struggles writing short stories. What are some tips or tricks that you can give for people who are struggling or who want to start doing short stories?
Uh, my first recommendation is with the Writers of the Future. They have an online workshop that is fantastic. My first version of the short story I thought was great, and then I watched that and realized how much I didn't know, and went back and redid it with proper plot structure, trifail cycles, stuff like that, and that I think is what actually brought it up to the honorable mention level. So definitely uh, take that course. It's free and self-paced uh, and a lot of fun. And so, yeah, definitely do that. And then my other secret to success is Wolf Moon's Super Secrets, which I found on the Writers of the Future forum. He has a whole thread on there that I think he's over 800,000 views at this point, that just goes through what he calls the super secrets of writing, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing because they're the simple things that people talk about, but he puts it in such a simple way that they actually click and we understand them. So I dug into that, and that really made a huge difference in my writing.
Now, for those who are wondering what the super secrets are, Wolf Moon has just finished a Kickstarter um, that is all about. I think the title is "Writing Howling Good Stories" or something similar to
Uh,
that.
how to write a howling good story. The Kickstarter just ended on the 6th.
The sixth, yeah. So if you didn't get a chance to participate in that, hopefully Moon will be able to publish more copies than just what is for the Kickstarters, and you'll get a chance to do that. Or you can go through the website Writers of the Future, and they are on there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, many of them are. It was kind of funny as I got into the forum. In his thread, he has an annual workshop basically that he was doing, and I was following through as people were posting their little snippets of story and talking about the different secrets and whatever. And um, he I didn't realize that at the time he had a closed session. So these people signed up at the beginning of the year, and he's going to work with them throughout the year. And I said, "Oh, this is great. Hey, can I join in?" I think it was May. And he said, "Oh, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. You can follow along, but no. Uh, it's closed. You have to have a silver honorable mention or higher to get in." to the workshop because so many people were signing up. He had to kind of narrow it down. And so I said, okay, I need a silver. Challenge accepted. So I yeah, I just dug into the thread, just reading through all this stuff he had on there, which was a lot to dig through. And it was my third story I wrote got or third story I submitted to Writers of the Future that got a silver, and so
It's
I was able to
amazing.
get into the next year.
Yeah, that's really amazing. That your third story got silver, your first one got honorable mention. People don't find that success really quick, but like you said, like you had gone through the writers workshop that Writers of the
Mhm.
Future supplies, which is amazing in itself. That not only do they have the competition, which for people who don't know, the Rise of the Future is the largest short story competition in the world. It has the most submissions. Um, it started back in the 80s, I believe. So it's been going for almost 40 years.
Yep.
And some of the winners of this contest have been people like Patrick Rothfuss, David Farland. It's kind of helped a lot of people. And for them to be able to put this free workshop out to help you with their contest, I think is amazing. But not only that, like you found, Wolf Moon through this with the Super Secrets,
Mhm.
and you got into the Super Secrets the next year. How important has that relationship been for you?
Oh, it's been frankly, it's been the secret to my success. I realize I've used that phrase a couple times now, but the Wolf Moon has really mentored me through my writing process, helped me to go from the enthusiastic amateur to a published professional in uh, it was about 18 months from the time I first started writing short stories until my first publication came out. And so, yeah, that relationship, that mentorship has meant the world.
Funny thing is, in fantasy, there's the trope of the mentor, like the old mentor, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, or
Right,
and
right.
sometimes in real life we don't take that to heart, but that is a real thing that can
It
really
is.
benefit people.
Yeah, the someone who has gone through the trenches and is willing to reach back and say, "Hey, here's a helping hand for you, so you don't have to suffer all the things I did." I mean, Moon, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he'd been submitting to Writers of the Future for 20 years or something like that, and um, he once he won in volume 35, I believe it was. He then started doing the super secrets, and since then he's had 8 people who have gone through his course have won, including me. So the super secrets definitely work.
Yeah, and that's amazing. For one, that he was that he kept going because he got lots and
Mhm.
lots of rejection, and two, that he did reach back and help other people along their journey, which I think
Yeah.
is astounding for people. Anybody that's willing to do that, I find amazing.
Yep. Well, and that's something I love about the science fiction and fantasy community. It seems to be those kinds of people that come here, the people who are willing to help those around them. It's not, they don't see other authors as competition. They're friends who are helping write more cool stories so we have more cool stories to read.
Right,
And so everyone's very helpful, which I've absolutely enjoyed.
that's amazing. So, what was it like winning the Rise of the Future?
It was amazing, shocking. I I was sitting on my couch, watching TV because, of course, it's from submission to finding out, who the winners are is a months long process. So I was getting anxious. Everyone on the forum was getting anxious, and we were, posting memes about, our anxiety. And I just posted something rather snarky, and my phone rang. It was unlisted number. I was like, "Oh no, no, that is it?" So I answered, and sure enough, it was Joni from Riders of the Future. And uh, yeah, that whole conversation felt surreal. And there's 2 calls you get actually. First it's for finalists, and then all of the finalist stories go to the judges, and then they pick the top 3. And so I had to keep silent for 2 weeks while everyone else is talking about, oh, I wonder, who got what and all that stuff. I can't believe the calls haven't gone out. I'm like, yep, calls went out. Can't say anything. Uh, and yeah, then I got the second call, and uh, I may have cheered very loudly. I apologize to Joni's ears, if I did.
That's funny. Um, did you go silent on the forums? You're like
Oh
posting
yeah,
snarky things, and like,
yep.
did anybody
I,
call you out on it? Why are you so
uh,
quiet?
no one called me out on it afterwards. There were a couple people that said, "I noticed that you hadn't said a whole lot." Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been my first clue. Is like, David's not saying anything. I bet he got
Hmm.
a call. No, that's amazing. So, for those who don't know, what do the top three get in the Riders of the Future
So
contest?
for Riders of the Future, once you win, and the winners are considered the top three of every quarter, so they have a total of 12 every year. Um, those winners are brought into Hollywood, California, to the Riders of the Future for a week-long writing conference taught by the top names in the industry. And then at the end of that conference, they have a Oscars style gala, black tie event, awarding all of the winners. And then for the top four winners, the first place from each quarter, those go into another competition for the Golden Pen Award to see who's the number one of the year. So I got third in my quarter, so I'm not up for the Golden Pen, which is the only reason I'm allowed to talk about my story. The Golden Pen people are kept silent until that award comes out at the ceremony.
That's got to be tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have a very, J.R.R. Tolkien-esque story. He started The Hobbit for writing
Hmm.
bedtime stories. Those novels, you ended up writing, like you said, two and a half novels.
Right. Yeah. The two and a half novels. Basically, I started out with everything uh, like the Disney stories, but instead of telling the stories as Disney told them, I took out the protagonist, put my daughter's name in as the protagonist, and just went with that. And so I did all these fairy tale retellings, and uh, they morphed into this whole world that I'd built, which surprisingly, I haven't, none of my short stories have been in that world. So I haven't touched it again
Wow.
as I've written those. But I definitely took a lot of my inspiration from Tolkien. In fact, we're reading through The Lord of the Rings right now with my daughter.
Oh, nice.
Told her that we have to read the entire book before she can watch the movies, and so she's very motivated.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Is that a read that you went through as a young boy?
Oh yeah, I remember reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings cover to cover. Um, yeah, about when I was 10,
Seems
and
to be
that
like the
definitely,
age that,
yeah,
yeah.
that set the stage for all of the fantasy and science fiction to follow.
So, who are some of your influences?
Um, I would say growing up, it was a lot of the big names. So Robert Jordan, David Weber, Terry Brooks. Um, and as I've gotten into writing more, as far as my writing voice and writing style, uh, it was Terry Pratchett with the Discworld. In fact, my winning story is a story about death, and I had to work really hard not to have Terry Pratchett's death. I'm like, no, no, he needs to be my own character. Um, as well as Jim Butcher with the Dresden Files. I just love that dry, sarcastic voice that he uses, and so that's definitely found its way into my writing.
Great influences. If you want to, you know, not copy, but like have a influence in your life, those are
Mhm.
two great ones. That's for sure. So, are you, you've done short stories. Are you going to continue with that? And then are you going to kind of try writing novels?
Uh, yes and yes. So I'm continuing with short stories. I have some that just haven't sold yet, so I'm going to keep them out to market until they sell. And then I'm also writing more. I'm part of the Wolf Pack with Wolf Moon. It's his Wolf Pack writing group, and he has challenges that he puts out from time to time, saying, "Hey, target this particular anthology, and so I'll write to that anthology and stuff like that. And then I'm also working on a novelization of my winning Writers of the Future story right now.
That's awesome. That's kind of the route that Scott Card took with Ender's Game. Like it won, I think, a
Hmm.
Nebula or Hugo as a short story, and then he won both of them as a novel. So
Yep.
being able to expand that is um, valuable. There's a
Hmm.
market for both. What has been some of the challenges of expanding that?
Uh, I've discovered that I'm not as verbose as I used to be. So I used to use a lot of words, and getting up to 80,000 words was relatively easy because I over explained a lot of things. And now I've gotten very good at tight prose as I'm writing. And so, instead of telling something in 50,000 words, I've now told it in 25,000 words. And I'm like, okay, I need more story here. So that's really been my biggest challenge is, I guess, expanding the world enough to fill a novel instead of just having a bunch of little short stories.
Now, when you're making that transition, have you reached out to any people, Moon or anybody else to kind of help you, give you advice on that?
For novel writing, just I guess not specifically. So I've pulled in a lot of help and knowledge just as I've learned short stories, and the vast majority of it translates over. Doesn't matter what you're writing. But as far as expanding into novels, I think that's something that I'm going to be working on that skill in the next few months. I am going to Superstars writing seminar next month, which is a water hose information with lots of the big names. And so I'm hoping to connect with a few people there and see what I can learn from them.
No, but it sounds like you're going to have two wonderful opportunities in the next coming months.
Yeah.
So both week-long things. So you're going to have 2 weeks of just a fire hose of information coming at you. And now people might not know this, but Riders of the Future, it literally is judged by industry professionals, people like Kevin J. Anderson and
Hmm.
Jody Lynn Nye, and he's just people who know what they're talking about. So if somebody recommends and selects your story, that's a big deal.
Yes. Yes. So Jody Lynn Nye is the current coordinating judge of Writers of the Future. And for me personally, the timing of her taking over, I think, worked in my favor for winning because my story is a humor story and she is a humorist. And uh, the when I got the call from Jody, the coordinator, she said she was Jody Lynn and I was very excited that humor story had gotten up to that point that she would be able to put it into the anthology. So yeah, I prefer to write humor because that's what I prefer to read, and uh, I'm looking forward to learning a lot from her once I get down there.
Yeah, and you get taught by them as well. So
Hmm.
that's just amazing opportunity for people that can go from a beginner, you know, an amateur writer to being able to be mentored by some of the best in the business
Right.
is a fantastic thing that Rise of the Future does. And then the superstars of writing like that right there was started by Kevin J. Anderson, along with others. Brandon Sanderson, I think, was on the original board, and
Yep. Dave
like
Farland
Dave
and yeah.
Farland. So and they've kept that really professional as well. And I know lots of
Hmm.
authors that have gone through that and have came out on the other side and have published work. So
Yep.
again, it's these people that have had success that have turned around and reached back and pulled other people with them.
Right. Yeah. And that was one thing. I am deeply honored. I wouldn't have been able to go to Superstars, except I applied for the inaugural Dave Farland Writing Endowment, and I won that one as well. So that's another thing I won last year, and so I'll be able to go. They are paying for the vast majority of the expenses for me to go, which is fantastic. Flight and everything.
Wow.
So yeah, I'll be able to just focus on getting there and soaking up all the knowledge.
Yeah, that's amazing. And again, it's it's a way to give back to the community. Dave Farland
Hmm.
was a huge influence in the fantasy and science fiction
Yep.
community, and to have that in his honor to reach out and help other people, I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what are some of your writing habits?
Well, I try to write for a couple hours a day at least. Um, I've been having a hard time recently developing that rhythm, mostly because I've been in transition for the last year. So I just retired from the Army officially the end of July. And so in that time was a lot of I was working for the Army. I had an internship for a couple of months. Then I had vacation time. So we're traveling all over, visiting family. And then, getting a new job, getting into the rhythm of that new job and all of that. So I'm just now starting to settle into a rhythm where I get a couple hours a day that I can write. Um, and I like to be able to get solid blocks of time because then I can get into the flow state and really get a lot of words through in order to be able to later go back and edit it.
No, that's really good to have that time that you can sit down and do that. And I think you said a key thing here is like, you got to sit down and get in the flow of things. Now, that's not to say the people who don't have time can't sit down for 15 minutes and bust out whatever they have
Oh
time
no,
to do.
absolutely, yeah. I have quite a few stories that have been 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. Um, I have one that I wrote mostly on my phone as I'm, sitting in waiting rooms and stuff like that. Just, oh, another idea came to me here. Let me add a little bit more to it, and or go through and edit it because I'm doing, it on Google Docs, and I can do it on whatever device I'm using. So,
Right.
yeah, there is no one right way. It's just a matter of tools that you can use to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, that's a great point of what works for you. It might be sitting down for 2 hours and writing. It might be in the morning. It might be late at night. It
Right.
might be, okay, I got a lunch break. I only have 20 minutes. After
Yep.
I eat, I can do. Like, if you really want to do this, I think consistency is key. Like, you
Yep.
can't you can't do 15 minutes here and 3 months later another 15 minutes. Like,
Right.
consistency is key.
Yeah.
So,
Writing, it's like any muscle. If you don't use it, it gets weak. But the more you do it at whatever pace that you can, the stronger it will become and the better you'll get at the writing.
right, and you mentioned Jim Butcher Dresden Files. I had an opportunity to interview him last year, and
Hmm.
he had just gone through a bunch of stuff, hardship, and so he was getting back to writing, and that's kind of what he said too. Like, okay, just if you're going through hard times, just do 15 minutes one day, and then the next day
Yep.
do 16. So it is a muscle that you can build up to, and that's great advice for anybody that's trying to begin this journey because people don't know it, but writing is hard. Like, it's difficult.
It is hard. It is. And one of the problems that a lot of people have that I have had and still struggle with is the difference between writing and editing. Is I have to turn off the internal editor, allow myself to write bad things, just let the word vomit come out on the paper, and then go back later and clean it up. If I come up with oh, I need to research that, make a note, come back to it later, just keep writing because when I'm constantly going back and editing and making sure that it sounds exactly right, or oh, I need to get that fact exactly correct. Let me turn to Google. The writing stops because I'm not writing. I'm
Right.
researching or I'm editing. So, yeah, turning off that internal editor is key for me.
No, and that's a fantastic tip of getting that word vomit, as you said,
Hmm.
out on the page and getting it down because it's so much easier to fix than if nothing's there at all.
Right.
And
Yep.
another thing I liked what you said is there are different stages to writing, and you hit on three of them: researching, writing, and editing. And you have to do kind
Hmm.
of all three on a lot of aspects. And knowing what part you're in, be like, okay, I'm on a writing, I'm writing right now, so that's all I'm gonna do. Or I'm gonna research something because you can get lost in research. Like, you can do
Oh
research
yeah.
for days.
Oh yeah. There's rabbit holes that you can go down and never come back up.
Right. And then forget what you're writing about in the first place.
Hmm.
And then the lost art of editing, you can never get to editing if you don't have anything on the page. So being able to
Yep.
balance all three, I think, is very important for a writer's journey.
Yep. Well, and then another um, problem that I still run into is the over editing problem, because it will never be perfect. It just needs to be good enough. Once you get
Right,
it to that point where it still has that uh, feeling of originality that came when you did the word vomit, and you haven't edited that all out so that it's bland. You know that, I guess, perfect point, that balance point of it's still original, um, and just stop at that point. Let it go, send it out. I have one story right now that is coming out in the Murder Birds anthology, and I just read today. I read it again because he sent it to us with the last copy saying, "Hey, check it over for errors. We're about to send it to the publisher." And I'm like, "Oh, missed a comma there, missed a comma there, and oh, I could have reworded that much better." I'm like, "Nope, just stop. It's okay. It's okay. There have been a dozen people have read through this already. It's fine. There's no, major errors, no misspellings. You know, it's good."
no, that's a great tip or trick. It's just like research and rabbit holes. Editing can be a big rabbit hole as
Yep.
well. And I don't know if you've ever seen like Heinlein's rules or anything like that. Robert Heinlein.
Yep.
Perfect. But yeah, that's basically what it says. Like he's like, write the story, finish it, send it out, even if it's not perfect, and keep it going until it sells. Now we
Yep.
live in a day and age to where we can get good enough and self-publish ourselves if we choose to go that route. Um, but he makes a key point, like it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Whatever is good enough, or whatever, all those little commas or the periods or the oh, this
Mm-hmm.
should be an exclamation point. Those don't matter in the long run. Get it out
Right.
until it sells,
Yep.
and that's a key principle, I think. So that's a great tip or trick that you just shared. So I mean, you must have lots of ideas floating around in your head. You might have a notebook with them or anything
Hmm.
like that. What do you look for in an idea to pursue? If you're like, okay, this is some goal. I'm gonna write this.
A lot of my ideas that I've written have been to a prompt. So one of the things that Wolf Moon teaches is the KYD exercise. It's called Kill Your Darlings. And so you get a prompt, you write to the prompt, whatever it is, write 1,000 words, and then you continually cut it down until you get to 250 words that has the heart and soul of the story. So you have the heart's desire for the character. There's some threshold moment there that they're taking action on their problem, whatever it is, and but that all comes from a prompt, and then expand it back up. So the first story I sold was written in his KYD workshop, which I then expanded up and got sold to Dreamforge magazine. It's a story called Properly Spiced Gingerbread, which is currently up right now on Critters for the annual Critters Readers Poll. So if anyone feels like going and voting, and that closes on the 14th. But the ideas came from a prompt, and it's just a matter of writing to it and finding something in there that is intriguing to me. Um, so that one was a gingerbread man who came out, and he's uh, not actually the gingerbread man. He's a demon who's possessed the gingerbread and wants to wreak havoc. And the witch who made him now has to figure out how to survive, the gingerbread man. Uh,
No, that's fantastic. And writing prompts, you're not the first person that said like they came up with a story from writing prompts. There's uh there's been quite a few on my podcast. Um, Katie Cross comes to mind that she's built a career just off a writing prompt, like her whole
mhm.
whole book series. So don't take those lightly. If you see a writing prompt, why don't you explore it and see how it goes? Like it can lead to something wonderful.
Well, and anytime an editor puts out an anthology call, that's a writing prompt. So the one I mentioned earlier, Murder Birds, the prompt was, I want stories about birds that are murderous. Science fiction, fantasy, horror, give me what you got. And by the time it got to us, the editor, Mike Jack Stumbos, had already gotten a bunch of stories, uh, but he hadn't gotten any stories about raptors. He's like, I, everyone's talking about murderous songbirds. Uh, in an anthology about murder birds, I need raptors. I need, the predators of the bird world. So give me stories about raptors. And I was like, okay, something about raptors, but with my twist, has to be humorous. Flamingos. There we go. And so I have a story coming out called Felix and the Flamingo.
That's amazing. Yeah, they can be powerful. They can definitely jumpstart a career. That's for sure.
Hmm.
So you mentioned, yeah, you're part of Moon's writing group.
Hmm.
How beneficial has that been for you?
It changed my writing completely. So, writing alone and unafraid, I didn't know what I didn't know. However, once I became part of a tight knit writing group where everyone is working together for that professional publication, um, it's yeah, it changed my perspective entirely. So I have people that I can swap stories with, swap ideas with. Um, we, uh, you know, we bounce off each other, whether it's encouraging someone who's down, everyone cheering for someone that made a sale. Just being part of that tight knit group has been fantastic.
That's amazing. For people who want to start a writing group, what has been some things that have worked for you guys? What are the things that haven't worked?
One of the things that has really made a difference with this writing group is the fact that it, everything remains positive. So, whatever it is we're doing, say we're critiquing something that someone's written, you find the positive things that you talk about first, all right, and then give the critique of, hey, fix this, fix that, this didn't quite work for me, and then come back with a positive, something to uplift them at the end. I've gotten critiques from people that were just brutal before, and it, you know, made me want to stop writing because I'm like, oh, clearly I'm horrible at this. Um, so being in a writing group that has skills for positive reinforcement uh, is really key to making the writing group work.
How often do you guys meet?
It's not actually a meeting thing because we're all online. We have people in the Wolf Pack that are around the world. So we do it through Discord, and it's just uh, uh, you're typing in different chat channels with whatever it is that you're talking about. Whether it's here's a 250 word snippet for someone to take a look at, tell me what you think, fix, don't fix, like it, whatever. Or, a Writers of the Future channel where we're talking about tips and tricks for, you know, submissions. Hey, we just learned some new information from Writers of the Future. Make sure that you incorporate this into what you're writing, stuff like that. So it's all just chat channels.
Which for those people who are worried about like meeting people, or you don't have anybody in your area that's they might be writers but not necessarily fantasy and science fiction, Discord or other, Zoom or
Hmm.
whatever, it can be valuable to meet up with people and be able to um, throw ideas at each other,
Yep.
have a writing group. We
Yep.
live in a fantastic age now where the world really is small and you can connect
It
with
is.
somebody everywhere.
Yep. I don't actually have a physical writing group I'm part of. I've only just recently met a couple of writers locally. Um, but outside of that, my writing group has been the Wolf Pack. And before that, and I'm still part of it, is the Writers of the Future Forum, which is another great place to find positive people that are aiming for the same thing you are.
Right. And one thing I've learned through this community is how positive and how uplifting and how many people want other people to succeed.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
And the,
been
the
amazing.
people that aren't positive tend to weed themselves out.
Right. No, I mean, I reach out to people all the time, and I'm just amazed at how many people say yes to just a silly interview. Now, I mean, I still don't have credibility, I got like 50 plus interviews under my belt, out in the world. And when I first started, like I didn't have anybody, and Jim Butcher said yes, and Dave Farland said yes, and
Yeah.
Peter V. Brett said yeah. Like it's like these New York Times bestselling authors, who didn't know me from anybody, and they're like, "Yeah, I'll meet with you." And like, holy cow! Like, and
Yeah.
it's just been amazing ever since. What are some of your habits? What do you do to keep sane?
Um, the, I have to learn to take breaks. So if I'm staring at the screen too long, yeah, everything starts to go sideways. So yep, taking breaks, whether that's going and playing a game with the kid, going for a walk, something like that. Um, I like to travel. That was one of the reasons I enjoyed being in the army. They moved me around a lot, so I got to see lots of fun and interesting places in the world. And still, now that I've retired, I still like to travel. So and seeing new places, meeting new people, also helps feed the story bank as I'm getting ideas and prompts that I see something interesting. I'm like, oh, I need to write that down. That can fit into a story somewhere.
As a writer, I think it's important to keep your eyes open because you know influences and ideas can come from everywhere. So
Hmm.
being able to do that, and as a writer, you kind of have a different lens as you're looking through the world as well.
Right, right. Yeah, I recently read an article on Dreamforge magazine that they were talking about dialogue and dialogue as eavesdropping. And so just go somewhere, go to a cafe, a park, wherever, and just sit there and listen to how people talk. And, I've done that a couple times where I just go to a cafe and, just listen to the people around me while I look like I'm typing. And I've gotten some interesting ideas that way.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. Now, has being in the army influenced any stories?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. The first one I wrote was called Hell's Bureaucracy. And it was about a guy who discovered that bureaucracy that plagues all of us is actually demon influence. And so he gets his third eye opened and he sees the demon who is tormenting him. And it's a story of him, overcoming his bureaucratic demon. And that that came from being in the army, which is one of the biggest bureaucracies in the world, and just learning to live with that. Um, and so, yeah, a lot of my stories influenced by my military career have been those types of aspects of the military. You know, not necessarily writing military sci-fi or anything like that, but the bureaucracy and the silliness that we can run into.
Right. That's amazing. It's fun when real life can influence your writing, which it should
Mhm.
anyway, because if you're looking around, like there's crazy stuff all over the place.
Yep. Yep.
So, other than the superstars of writing and the writers of the future, are you going to go to any conventions or anything like that this year?
I don't have any plans for in-person conventions beyond those two, mostly because of vacation days with my new job. So all of my vacation days are going to those two, even to the point where my wife said, "And when are we going on vacation?" Ah, yeah, about that. So um, I will probably be doing some online conferences. FireCon is one that I've done a couple years now that I will do again this year, and always keeping my eye out for more online conferences I can join in on.
Nice. So, other than what we've covered so far, do you have any other tips or tricks that you can share that anybody that's beginning this journey?
Uh, just keep going. The writing and getting published is a tough uphill journey. Rejection is huge. You look at any market, and their acceptance rate is maybe 2%. So that's a lot of rejection. I have 8 stories that have been accepted, 4 of which have been published, and of those, that my rejection rate is still way over 90%. So just keep writing, keep going. And if you feel like you're about to hit that point where you can't do it anymore, go just a little bit farther, and you'll get that breakout. For me, I hit that point with my novels where I was like, I can't go any farther. I keep getting rejected from these agents. I don't know where else to go, and so I switched tacks a little bit and uh, went over to short stories and started getting that that positive feedback. That first honorable mention was a huge positive feedback. I was like, oh, I actually know what I'm doing. Okay, this works. So yeah, it's a hard journey, but it should be fun, and just keep going.
Now that's a great advice. Look at what you're doing, and if it's not working, pivot. You know,
Yep,
like adapt and overcome, like they say, right?
yep,
Like that's great advice. If you're writing short stories and you're having a hard time selling those, switch to novels. If you're writing novels, switch,
yep,
mix it up a little bit, see how you do.
yep.
No, that's great advice. David, go ahead and tell people how they can get a hold of you, how they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on my website, which is just davidhankins.com, Hankins. I'm also pretty active on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter, my handle is underscore David Hankins. Facebook, it's just David Hankins dash author. I've just gotten into Instagram, but haven't really done a whole lot there yet. And but all of that you can link to from my website. I have links to all of my stories that are published and pending there on my website. And as I continue on and push out my first novel, that's where you'll hear about it first.
Awesome. I'm excited to see your career grow and see how far it goes. So this is going to be fun to watch you. So thank you so much for getting on with me today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I've had a lot of fun talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Troy Podcast. Please subscribe, like, and share with your friends.